What's up YouTube, Capital G here. Today we're going to do a little competitive trolling. Basically, I consider trolling just any deck that you play to annoy your opponent. But I don't like to use trolling as an excuse for not being competitive. I feel like if you go to any event, your goal should definitely be to win, not to just piss your opponent off. So this is a deck that I used to play on DN a long time ago. It's been a couple of formats. I figured since I wasn't really sure what I'd be playing right now, that I would go ahead, build it, see how it ran. I've had some mixed results. The deck has actually a pretty good rabbit hero matchup. It's just decks that can outpace this deck, that can put a bunch of monsters on the field early. A lot of your non-conventional decks can pose problems, but it's Infernity Randomizer. That's basically the deck. I'll explain it in a little bit of detail if you guys don't know what the deck is made to do and whatnot. Randomizer is the heart and soul of the deck. Basically, your win condition is this. You have Randomizer on the field, sometimes supported by an Archfiend or with like 2 Randomizers or something like that. You always want to keep your back row with like 4 cards in it. And then every single turn, essentially, Randomizer is a +1. You activate it, you either draw a monster, which is a lot less likely because we only run, most Randomizers run about 8 to 10 cards as far as monster lineup. But more likely you'll draw a spell and trap. And yes, your opponent does get to see it. You take 500, but the point is you're going +1 every turn. So basically you should have advantage throughout the entire game. I mean, after like turn 3, you should have, stiff advantage. I've lost games with this deck where I have 5 cards, but my opponent has that, that 1 out and they've got 2 cards or something like that. So my monster lineup is 3 Randomizer, 3 Archfiend, 2 Necromancer, and then one Mystic Swordsman. People might ask why I run Mystic Swordsman. That's pretty easy because Randomizer is a warrior, which means you can search it from the deck with Rhoda, and you can get it with Reinforced Truth. So I just wanted another option, for like random stuff like Ryko, Spirit Reaper, Snowman Eater, stuff like that in the main deck. Ryko can actually be a really big problem. For the spells, we've got 3 Pot of Duality, 2 Smashing Grounds, 3 MST, 3 Offerings to Doom. Offerings to the Doom is an old card. I think it came out in Pharaoh's Servant. It destroys a face-up monster, but you have to skip your draw phase, so it's actually a neg-1. And honestly, because of the power creep, like, this card should remove a card from play, and it should be able to kill face-ups and face-downs for that type of cost. But here's the thing: you don't ever want cards in your hand, and you don't want your back row to be cluttered. So this is just spot-on removal. Your opponent tries to do any type of rabbit play, or they try and do any type of play that involves exceeding with 2 monsters. You can break it up. If your opponent attacks, you can break it up. And skipping your draw phase would be crucial. That would be devastating in any deck except this one, because that neg-1 that you take with Offerings to the Doom, you're going to make it up right with Randomizer anyway. Like, on your very next turn, you're going to make it up. Randomizer will be your draw phase, basically, so you're not actually going neg-1. We've got Monster Reborn. Almost always you're going to reborn your opponent's monsters because all of the monsters in this deck except for Archfiend are weenies. Rhoda, and then Book of Moon. For the traps, because we have the 8 Infernities, we run 3 Barrier, 3 Deep Prison, and 3 Evac Device. Those are the main defensive cards. Like, Randomizer is weak as shit. I mean, just about anything can run them over, so you have to keep them protected. Even though Evac is a neg-1, once again, you're not concerned about neg-1s in this deck because you're always going +1. So even if you go neg-1 with a Dark Bribe or an Evac or Offerings to the Doom, as long as your Randomizer stays on the field, he'll go +1 for you next turn. So you can mitigate that very easily. We have the Solemn Brigade, 2 Warnings, 1 Judgment, Mirror Force, Reinforced Truth. I was running 2 of these in previous versions, but I feel like you don't need 2 right now. Sometimes it can get cluttered. I mean, basically, this gets Randomizer from the deck. In very rare situations, you'll get Mystic Swordsman if your opponent sets a face down and you feel like it could be Snowman, Spirit Reaper, Galen Duo, whatever. 1 Infernity Break. Any more than 1 is really inconsistent. 1 Starlight Road, because Heavy Storm is the absolute bane of this deck. And you have Solemn Judgment, you have Starlight Road, you have Barriers, but you never want your opponent to get a Heavy Storm off. And then Dark Bribe. Dark Bribe picks up the slack for everything that Starlight Road doesn't cover. I was going to run 2 Starlight Roads, but here's the thing. You don't want cards sitting in your back row for like more than a few turns. You don't ever want to have your back row cluttered. You always want to be cycling through cards. That's how this deck wins, because the more you cycle through cards, the more turns that you have when you only have 4 cards, and you can use Randomizer to go plus, 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 plus every single turn. So this deck does have some consistency problems. Like sometimes you'll open with 2 monsters, which kind of sucks. Another thing to know about this deck is when you draw, if you draw Infernity Archfiend off of Randomizer, you can't special summon it and use this effect because your opponent takes 800. Archfiend summon has to be the last thing on the chain. There can be nothing else. So it would be the same thing if you had like Upstart Goblin and you drew Archfiend off that. But yeah. The extra deck is pretty much irrelevant. People ask, why don't you run any tuners? It's because that's not the win condition of this deck. The win condition is not to tune. It's not to exceed. It's to basically have Randomizer on the field, eventually get an Archfiend, and anytime your opponent attacks, you deprison it. And if you don't deprison it, you evac their monster, or you offerings to the doom their monster. Or if they set a card, you attack it and then you smash and ground it. You always have 1-for-1 removal. You just flood them with 1-for-1 removal, and you basically just eventually your +1s, whether it be topping Archfiend, whether it be Randomizer, they eventually just, you know, you start outpacing you start outgaining your opponent. I don't run Infernity Launcher because I tested it. It's really inconsistent. Like Infernity Launcher is one of those cards that's best when you're trying to explode. You know, you want to go like Archfiend, Necromancer, Archfiend, you know, Beetle, blah 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 blah. You know, but outside of big synchro plays, like Infernity Archfiend doesn't really have, or Infernity Launcher doesn't really have any place in this deck. Plus, you're never going. I mean, you have 2 Necromancers. If by chance your opponent kills a Randomizer, which is the main card you want to get back outside of Archfiend, you have Necromancer to get those cards back. So yeah, this is my deck. I've just been testing it. It's pretty good. You know, it's not the greatest thing on earth, but it's definitely competitive, I would say. Right now, it's just some decks like Lightsworn can give it problems and trouble. So let me know what you guys think about this deck. Again, I tried to make it as competitive as possible. I don't want to just say I'm trolling and show you guys a shit-tastic deck that can't win at all. So yeah, thank you for watching.